think you're on. I think everybody's screen light on.
Finance and Human Resources Committee is called to order on Wednesday, September 25th, 2019 at 6:03 PM. Would you call the roll, please?
Alderperson Kastner?
Present.
Alderperson Sarian?
Present.
Alderperson Bailey will be arriving shortly.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the September 11th, 2019 Finance and Human Resources Committee minutes.
Move for approval.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 3, presentation of proposed 2020 budget and brief discussion.
And should we wait for Alderperson Bailey?
Let's go, that's a good idea. Item 4, approval of schedules of disbursements in the amount of $336,606.37.
Move for approval.
Second, discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 5, approval of mileage reimbursements in the amount of $377.14.
Motion for approval.
Second, discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 6, investments and reinvestments.
Motion for approval.
Second, discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 7, accept August 2019 financial statement.
Motion to accept.
Second, discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 8, other topics for future agendas. Should we wait on that?
I mean, the biggest thing that we'll be talking about is the green binder that I've laid out before you. I want to thank Tim and Paula for putting that all together, working on it feverishly up until this afternoon. I guess, I don't know if I should wait for Alderperson Bailey. I mean, the same kinds of things that have happened in the past. With regard to the budget itself, it is becoming more and more of a work of art. The state has two programs, the expenditure restraint program, as you know, and then the other one is shared revenues. The ERP component, because of the referendum, has had some impact on next year's budget. The way that it works, we weren't eligible in 2019 for the expenditure restraint because of the referendum, which added new police and fire personnel. What that means is that the payment for that non-eligibility in 2019 is being deferred in 2020. Means we don't get the ERP payment in 2020, which is $650,000, roughly $650,000 to $700,000 from the state. However, in the 2020 budget, to become eligible again in 2021 for the payment, the $650,000 to $700,000, the expenditure restraint program essentially says that we can increase our expenditures by $1,095,000 in 2020, which we do to make sure that in 2021 we receive the payment from the state at the maximum level of expenditures. The great difficulty comes in is that under the levy restraint program, or levy limits, levy restraint, we can only raise taxes 2.36%, which is about a $700,000 tax increase, which is below the expenditure restraint, which is a different program, of $1,095,000. It's about $300,000, $400,000 difference. That creates an interesting dynamic in a budget. Especially in a budget in which we're not receiving the expenditure restraint payment that we were not eligible for in 2019, but does not get paid until 2020.
We have that money because we didn't hire it immediately.
No, they look at your expenditure restraint program in 1 year, and then they pay you in the next year.
Yeah, so.
But basically, yeah. But, so this year, while we received the referendum dollars and the ERP dollars, but we weren't out from 2018, we're not eligible for the payment from this year in 2020. I understand it's complicated. It's really not. What it does is it creates a certain, with the planets align in 2020, it makes it a very, very difficult budget, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. The tax rate, which is what everyone's concerned about, is $9.09 right now. Next year, in this proposed budget, expected to be $9.14, which is about a nickel per thousand. On a $200,000 home, I'm told that it approximates to about $10.25 or something, which I think is incredibly fiscally prudent, and with everything going up the way that it is, that's pretty fiscally responsible. The challenge in this budget, I mean, the two things that are the most significant drivers in this budget, which is essentially flat across the board in each and every department. Our healthcare, I have, for purposes of this budget, anticipated a 10% healthcare increase. Every percent is roughly $50,000. I've also, most of our employees are still subject to collective bargaining, and it assumes a 2% salary increase across the board, and that's consistent with the collective bargaining agreements that we have. If you were to add up in round numbers the 10% healthcare increase along with the 2% salary increase, it's approximately $680,000. So all of the levy, essentially of the $700,000 that we can levy for, which is approximately $10.25 for a $200,000 home, is being directed to healthcare and salary increases under this budget. That's a challenge, right? This means essentially that you have $20,000 of wiggle room with the amount of taxes that can be raised. Some of the other things, and I won't get into great detail in the budget, and I encourage you, like every year, to go through it. I've been told that all the supporting documentation that we always provide will not be provided in a binder this year. You'll get it electronically. Would probably make it easier to search. Hopefully it's searchable. I don't know if it is. But I think you can create a PDF to make it searchable. That'll help you from going, you know, and Tim or Rob or Dennis can help with that. I mean, some of the things that are most challenging is salt, road salt. If you sit on the Board of Public Works, you probably had a new policy coming your way with regard to what we plow and when we plow and how we plow and how much salt we put down. Part of that is in direct relationship to salt prices. Salt prices next year, well, historically, salt prices have ranged from about $30 a ton to $50 a ton. I mean, and that's quite a wide variation, are now ranging from $60 to $70 to $80 a ton. That's a big deal. That's more than $20,000 that we can raise our taxes by, right? So things like that have been absorbed in the budget within departments, keeping them flat. So there may be less signage, or I don't know what the line by line is. I haven't memorized all that stuff yet. But those are the kinds of things that we're struggling with in next year's budget. Again, like every year, I would encourage you to look at it. I would encourage you to reach out to every department. I would also caution when you do reach out to other departments, you know, because they're going to hit you. We were how much short when the asks started? $2 or $3 million.
Oh, well,
So it's like, you know, and you didn't get that. okay? You got a flat budget. And it's flat. In the reality is, while we can increase our expenditures by $300,000 under the ERP program for a payment in 2021, we can't raise taxes to pay for that. Very reluctant to raise fees, licensing fees, I mean, all that kind of stuff as well. It is what it is, right? Why is it like this? There are a couple things with regard to our city, and it's a problem, I think, nationally, right? And it's a big problem in the state of Wisconsin. In Wisconsin itself, Act 10, which is now quite a long time ago, it seems, we took a very aggressive stance with Act 10 with regard to health insurance and sharing pension obligations. Many of those benefits for us are diminishing because things just cost more, right? There were other communities, and I won't get into names, that took a different approach at that time and have been starting to feel the financial pressure, I think, earlier than we did, okay? You can usually tell those communities by the quality of their police cars, stuff like that, right? They had to, by basically giving their employees the benefit, or what was, quote, taken away from Act 10, they never enjoyed the benefits of the cost savings that ultimately resulted from Act 10, or potential cost savings. Another key thing that we're all struggling with, and I know some neighboring communities have already rolled their capital equipment into their operating budget. You can basically levy four things, and you can levy for the general fund, which is how you operate your government, and that's the biggest thing. You can levy for capital equipment, which is trucks and cars and those kinds of things. You can levy for debt, which we try to keep around 15% plus or minus of our entire budget. And you can levy cash for capital improvements, which are roads. What happened a few years ago, and it might be 4 or 5 by now, I'm not sure. Was it about 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Doesn't matter. The legislature changed the levy limits to basically say that all of the things that you levy for, in essence, other than debt service, which is controlled by a 2005 resolution that changes things and kind of, in the formula, takes it out of the formula to the, it's more complicated, but debt isn't a big component of the levy limits, but capital equipment and capital improvements are. Capital improvements, for the most part, now are paid with debt because you can't raise the cash to do projects with cash. And what's happening with capital equipment now, in the old days, it would be, okay, I'm raising the levy by 5 cents, but I'm also raising it a penny for capital equipment, right, to buy all this stuff. Now that capital equipment is thrown into the 5 cents, which is what the rate increase is, the mill rate increase. That has a detrimental effect on us because what we'd liked to do is we'd like to take that penny or two or whatever it was, take that cash, fund our cash-based capital equipment program. So when we had a fire truck that was $1 million, and we're saving so much per year on the capital equipment side, that when that fire truck came along, we'd have money in the bank, we'd go and buy a fire truck, right? Same thing with police cars. Every year you put it's basically $250,000 into a police car account, and every year you would have money in that account. So when you had a good year, you may not use it, but when you needed the cars because they were crashed or they were getting old, you had the cash to basically go and pay for those. What the levy limit law does now is it basically says, nope, that nickel that you're getting this year not only is funding your general government and your general fund, it's also funding the capital equipment, which is bad. What does that mean? That means when your expenditures need to go up by $1,100,000 to get the ERP money, but it's going to be held off for another year, kind of, right? That you could raise your expenditures and you could figure all that stuff out, right? You could make it work. Now what you're doing is instead of, it takes us about 2 million, million and a half a year to fund capital equipment in a fiscally prudent way on our capital cash schedules. And we are at about $700,000. So we're short at least 1.3 million or more. It's probably more. It probably takes about, I don't know, 2.3 million or 4 million to fully fund that program. So that's a problem. So what you'll see in here is the capital equipment schedule. And there are still some of those cash accounts that we're putting money away for stuff. So we're blending that, and we're doing is whatever we can. We're supplementing it with levy, but it's only $600,000 or $700,000. The rest is coming from our savings accounts that we've accumulated over the course of time, and that's not sustainable. So, third thing I'd just point out, and it was just so opportune. There's this magazine that we get. It's called Governing the State and Localities, September 19th edition. I don't know if you guys get this one. Mm-hmm. It's Addicted to Fines. So, Warwick, Georgia, population 397, depends on fines and forfeiture for 75% of its general budget. It's just one of hundreds of towns across the country that are dangerously reliant on fines.
75%?
75%. And if you ever drive down Highway 36 to maybe Watertown, you'll notice that the Racine County Sheriff or Wind Lake is always there. If you drive through, we were talking about Rosendale, which is on Highway 49, west of Fond du Lac. Since I was a kid, there has been a police officer on the east side of town in a speed trap, constantly pulling people over. There are other communities that are doing the same kinds of things, right? And you all know where the speed traps are, and you know which the communities are. The reality is, though, that that's not a way to fund government, but it's getting to the point where those kinds of things are the only option, even for communities our size, when it comes to the restrictive levy limits.
Yeah, we're in a box.
We're in a box, and that's all stuff to be concerned about. When Alderperson Bailey the other night with electrical and plumbing permit, and I get it, I totally get it. I don't want to be like this little place in Georgia where in order to change your hot water heater costs you $1,000 in fines or permitting fees, right? Or if you drive through our city, you're guaranteed, there's this other argument that you should pull everybody over, right? I get that too. But, that's not the way to run government. I kind of wish the state would re-examine what it's doing, because things are getting more expensive. Our police department is incredibly crucial. Our fire department's crucial. The limited number of employees that we have at DPW is incredibly crucial. And the very small number of people that we have working in this building is critical to elections, to making sure that the money is where it's supposed to be and it's being spent prudently, and the rest, right? Another extraordinary expense in the budget is next year's a presidential election. There's nothing in the levy limit law that says, well, when you have $110,000 to $150,000 election, you can raise your taxes to pay for it. What you end up doing is that you defer the hiring of a police officer for half a year, or a firefighter and a firefighter for half a year to cover the cost. It does help, however, with the expenditure restraint program, because we can raise the expenditures by $1 million, but we can only raise taxes by $700,000, and that $700,000 basically only covers health insurance and 2% raises. So I'll let you all look at it and enjoy it. What I'm getting back to what I was saying, it's like the department heads are all very, very well aware that this is a flat budget. They've all been incredibly cooperative in this budget, I think. I think they've been disappointed in this budget, right? Because they want to do things that make the city better and safer and more efficient. Typically cost money to do those things, unfortunately. So that's where we're at. Mr.
Great.
Bailey came in late. I mean, I know you were on your way and you got held up. Yeah, so the rate, I mean, what you may have missed is that the rate is going from 909 to 914. It's a nickel. That's what the rate's going up. That results in about a $10.25 increase on a $200,000 home. That's the city's portion of the tax bill, okay? Healthcare is anticipated in this budget to be at 10%. In the 14 years, going on 15 years that I've been doing this, we have kept health insurance increases single digit every single year. The only wild card in this budget is something like healthcare. If it were to be dramatically higher, that would create some significant issues with regard to this budget. And we don't have that information completely set yet, and we're working on that. So that's a cautionary tale.
Yeah, that,
Okay.
kind of almost, until we know that,
Until,
somewhat pointless to.
until we know that, that's, it's sort of pointless. It's not pointless.
I mean,
The budget is what it is, but
It dramatically will change with what's.
if well, there's two things that are associated with that, and I want to kind of bring them to the forefront right now. Health insurance, and there was an article in Bloomberg. You know, I read all this stuff during the day. Health insurance premiums are going up. The shifting of the cost is being shifted to the user. We could probably save a significant amount of money if the real deductibles that were followed, the 6,000 and 8,000, or what is it?
4,000 and 8,000.
4,000 and 8,000, excuse me, were followed, and there wasn't a healthcare reimbursement, medical reimbursement account, or whatever, HRA, HMR, whatever it is. But the reality is that's a short-term solution to a fiscal problem, and what it will do is it will drive employees, which are difficult enough to get, to places where those things aren't like that. There's one community that's south of Milwaukee County that has done that with true deductibles, and it has created a firestorm and a lot of contention in the community.
We really don't put much in that account, do we? 50, 100,000?
No, it's more than that.
It's more than that.
More than 100?
Yeah. I don't remember what it is.
$341,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
Still, I mean,
Yeah.
comparison to the cost of the health insurance.
So, I mean, if you think about $341,000, you go, holy God, that's a lot of money. That's 3 police officers. 2. Sorry, that's my phone. It's the
My take is it's not gonna save us.
That's not the kind of stuff that saves us. It's a short-term fix, but it creates long-term structural problems when you want to have the best trained, most responsive people working for you. I mean, we do operate this place. We don't have the armies of people in departments. We have few people with very strong skill sets that manage and direct and get things done. Public Works, I mean, it's an example, right? I mean, yeah, they plow the streets, and yeah, they'll dig ditches, that kind of stuff. But they're also involved in a lot of the things that save our city a ton of money. Example is the finance office. You'll see that's being securityized, right? One of our Public Works employees, or a couple of them, with carpentry skills, is building that, is doing that, right? And it's probably saving us tens of thousands of dollars by doing it in-house and not going out for a contract and not going out for a bid and not doing all that other stuff. Some of the improvements at the parks were done with Public Works employees, saving, I would argue, millions of dollars and lots of time saved. So that's interesting. One other thing I guess we should probably talk about, and maybe this is an item for a future agenda, is the countywide sales tax that's been proposed. It's a tough one right? And there was a chart, and I think I distributed it all to you, and and that the chart was essentially that, well, this would be for property tax relief, and this would be for you. You would get this amount of money based on the number of people you have per capita. That's how it's distributed. It's collected by the county, distributed on a per capita basis. What they were suggesting is that the money that would flow to us would be in the form of a residential tax credit for the property tax relief, which would mean that only residences would get this credit, and Walmart, my favorite big box that likes to sue us, wouldn't get one. Okay. The talk was under their formula that somehow Greenfield would get $700,000 in property tax relief annually, plus or minus. I think it was a little bit more, which is about a nickel, right, on the rate, because that's what our taxes are going up this year. And then somehow we would get $2.1 million in an income stream, which wasn't clear how that impacted the levy,
Yeah.
how that impacted expenditure restraint, how it impacted anything, which is a problem. So if we can only raise our expenditures $1,095,000, even though we can only raise $700,000 worth of taxes, and we're getting and this is never going to happen, we get a $2 million check from sales tax. We can't spend but $1,095,000 of it, because we'll lose $650,000 in state aid. And I can't imagine a legislature ever just saying you can have $2 million. It doesn't make sense. And so, there was supposed to be so we had an ICC meeting. The proposal was made. The mayor, myself, the mayor of Wauwatosa, the village president, I think, of Shorewood, Mayor Franklin, Mayor of West Dallas, and I think almost every one of us, we're like, how does this work? There was supposed to be another ICC meeting in 2 weeks following that, a special meeting. And that was where all of our questions would be answered. That has since been canceled. And those that are working on it are supposed to be visiting us to kind of give us a clue as to how all this would work. I guess what I would say is I wouldn't count on getting another $2 million in cash.
Even what they're laying out, we don't end up getting it anyhow.
So it's completely confusing. I understand the formula generally. It's 50. I think it's 50% county. I think it's 50% municipalities. I think the municipalities are based on a per capita basis. Then there's this other $10 million that comes out of it, which I suspect is for lead issues in the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County. The $700,000 in property tax relief would be out of our portion, but the county would also have our money,
Yeah.
$700,000. So property taxes would actually go down in 2 nickels instead of 1 nickel, which would be our money. I don't know. Forgetting about trolleys and forgetting about all of that stuff, the city of Milwaukee, the municipalities are in dire need, and the city of Milwaukee especially, for another revenue stream. Their entire levy, so while I'm sitting here going, things are tight and things are flat, the city of Milwaukee's levy doesn't even cover its police department. So when alderpersons say historically, like, well, we should hire 200 more. Well, you figure they're 150,000 a pop, and you can't even pay for what you have. That's a problem, right? There were talks about pension liabilities for the city of Milwaukee being like 29 million or something going into next year, and maybe approaching 100 million in a couple of years. This property tax thing, I'm not sure, or not sales tax thing, excuse me, I'm not sure solves that problem. It might solve it for a year or two. It might allow them to shift the deck, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it would work, okay, the way they're contemplating it. Milwaukee County, I don't get. So if half the sales tax goes to Milwaukee County, and Milwaukee County needs the money too, no question about it. I mean, they have no money, and their population of employees has dropped dramatically. I mean, by multiples. And the parks are falling apart. We all agree that the parks are falling apart, and they need a new safety center, and they need this, and all of that. But the reality is that all of this money, from what I can tell, does nothing to address. It would essentially address their pension issues, and it wouldn't even be enough to address their pension issues. And I'm not sure that any of this goes to the things that people in our community think are important, which are parks, to some extent the airport, and transit, if transit's an issue. And I'll just say for purposes of discussion it is. Not sure any of that helps that. And I'm not sure that it helps the structural deficit, if that's the right word, that the county has. So, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I think I'm reluctant to go to an ICC meeting where all the other mayors and village presidents in Milwaukee County are and say, yes, I'm in favor of a 1% sales tax increase when, one, there's no guarantee that it's going to go through the Republican legislature. I could just see the Republican legislature saying, oh, wow, Greenfield could get $22.1 million plus $700,000. That's $2.8 million in property tax relief. We'll just knock off whatever that would be, 25, 30 cents off the tax rate, right? Then we would be tied to an unstable source of revenue to fund our government. Because you can't, I mean, in good times, and we're probably going through good times, or we might have peaked with the good times, but things like 2007 and 8 make sales fall flat on their face, and instead of getting 2.8 million in anticipated sales tax revenue, now we're down to like 800,000 or something, because nobody's buying anything anymore. That's not a good thing, I don't think. As much as I hate the property tax, as much as we stress out about a nickel, right, and how we're going to spend it. And as much as I would love to get some portion of the sales tax, I'm not sure that sort of an undefined project that doesn't ultimately help the two main benefactors, which are the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, especially Milwaukee County. I'm not sure that that's necessarily a good thing. I still need to talk to them, need to figure out, but at first blush, I'm not sure that I can support that. And I'm not sure that I'm in a position, even though I'm the mayor, and there's other mayors and there's other village presidents in the room, and I understand that this is just to say that it goes to referendum to vote on it. I'm not sure that I'm the one that makes that call. Right?
The call to put it to referendum?
Well, the call to support it,
Or not
when it's difficult to determine what it actually is, what its actual impact is, and then to have it go to referendum, only to be a referendum where we ultimately don't get it anyways, or it ultimately has a negative impact on how we finance things. So that's a quandary for me.
It could be a detriment.
I would think that there
So you're saying the citizens are going to decide? Is that
the
what you're saying?
the citizens are ultimately going to decide a question as to whether or
But you
not.
but the mayors can influence the citizens.
Well,
You can.
So this is a thing. If they were to say to you, well, Mayor, we want to go to referendum. We want to raise the sales tax by 1% countywide, or is it 1%? 1% point? Is it 1%? And your citizens are gonna get a nickel of property tax relief, right? Actually 10 cents. And you're also gonna get $2.1 million in real money every year, over and above all of this other stuff, right? and it's up to the citizens to decide if you're gonna get that $2.1 million of cash every year, I'd go, yeah, let's let the citizens vote on that. The problem is that it's not defined what impact any of that stuff has on any of this. So I could be supporting something that is the furthest from reality that may adversely have an impact on this stuff. I mean, if I'm getting $2.1 million of new money, but I'm losing 700,000 in ERP, and the levy limit still controls as you're spending, so somehow, right, your growth formula, whatever it is,
I mean,
it may end up costing me $2.1 million.
Right. So
And I
that's
can't-
why you have to figure out what.
But how do I support
you
some?
and,
No,
all
well,
you
that's the.
Financial brains have to figure it out. and
Yes,
then
so,
tell
which
your
gets us back to this other thing where when we were asked to do it, we had all of these questions. A meeting was supposed to be held where those questions would be answered. That meeting was canceled. There's supposed to be a reach out to all of the communities, and we're the fourth largest municipality in Milwaukee County, right? And we haven't had any of those discussions yet. And I'm presenting a budget, right? And there's a mayor on TV saying, well, if I don't get this, I'm cutting policemen in the biggest city in the county. And there's a county executive who's issuing dire warnings if he doesn't get it. And there's a whole bunch of us going, how can I support something when I don't even know what it is?
Yeah.
Final thing I'll leave you at. They say that it's a 1% sales tax, and while it'll only be, what is it, 5.6, it'd only be another percentage, right? Thing I would caution you is that's not the only sales tax that hospitality industries pay. So and I hate to bring up the Starbucks thing, but I feel like I have to every meeting to let people know that I go there. When I go to Starbucks and I buy a coffee, or I go to McDonald's for my kids with a Happy Meal or a Big Mac meal, the sales tax is 6.1%, because 5 cents, 0.5%, goes to the Milwaukee convention, or not convention, Milwaukee Center, to support that. So it's not just, it's another percent on top of that. So it's actually, if you go out to McDonald's, it's 7.1%. If you go to Starbucks, it's 7.1%. If you go to a hotel, it's 7.1%. And I'm not sure, if you go to a restaurant, it's 7.1%. I remember there was a time when Chicago, and this was years ago, when I'm going up to the cottage with my parents or something. And it was like on AM radio, because we always listen to WBBM, right? And there was this talk that, they're going to raise their sales tax to 8%. And everyone's like, man, that's bad, right? Who's going to shop there, right? And now it's higher than that, I think. And they tax they do this stuff, right? They're looking for money everywhere. How does that impact us as a first-ringer community around the city of Milwaukee, immediately adjacent to municipalities that may not get this 1%, like Waukesha or Racine or Ozaki or whatever ones are next to us, right? Where are you going to go and buy your stuff? You going to go to the Costco in Milwaukee County, or are you going to go to the Costco that's in Waukesha County? Because for every $100, right? Right? Where are you going to buy your furniture at? You going to buy it on 125th Street, or are you going to buy it on 123rd Street? It's just assuming, right? That stuff has an impact, and it's not usually 1 year. It's over the course of 3 or 4 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. And some would argue that some of the issues that are happening in the city of Milwaukee right now, why we're being successful, and why Kohl's department store has 1 store in the city of Milwaukee. It's at Point Loomis, right? Why aren't more Kohl's stores in the city of Milwaukee? I don't know. It's more expensive there, right? Why is there a Kohl's store, the flagship store of their new model in our city? Why is it in Milwaukee, right? Well, because we respond with police officers. We do all this stuff that drives, seriously, I'm getting the bald spot now because we pull out our hair. Alderperson Kastner has been struggling with that for years, right? So, but this is, I mean, all of that stuff matters. It's not just, well, can we get $2 million? Sure, I'll take $2 million. I could fund my capital equipment schedule again, like I used to be able to until they changed it 3, 4, 5 years ago. That would be great.
Maybe you couldn't.
Maybe I couldn't. And nobody's answering any of those questions, right? That's the issue. So that is a big issue. I mean, that is a big issue, and that's coming to the forefront. And maybe all the answers are available to those that need them, but right now they're not, to me. And I'm supposed to tell you, right?
That's
Kind of, right? So, okay, that's it. That's, again, so the other, and I don't know if you were here, but we usually get 2 books, 2 binders. The other one's going to be available electronically,
Oh, okay.
and it'll be searchable. So that means if you wanted to type in a keyword or phrase or, how much does this person get, you should be able to do that in the document, I think. It just doesn't make sense to print off 10 reams of paper. Okay?
Okay, and then another topic for future agenda, probably be on our next agenda. The Board of Public Works last night, John's Disposal came to us, and
Yeah.
I know it was,
So-
that happened in the past too, so.
So there's a
we're
couple,
negotiating
there's a
the
couple things there.
contract, And so that's gonna come to us.
Yeah,
to
so
the
that's
Board of
coming to,
Public Works.
yeah,
gonna-
so, I mean, something like that, because it's involving a contract negotiation, is something that we probably want to do in closed session, so that item should be held in closed session. From what I understand, and we talked about it today, and I've been aware of it, that we need to talk about that. Because there's all sorts of things at play there. It's not just, I want more money, right? So,
Okay. Good, okay, so any other questions about the budget right now?
No.
Okay.
just to
So-
let you guys, just to fill you in though, tomorrow we're going downtown, staff is going downtown to look at the new development proposal for 84 South, the 4th rendition, which includes a public market component and the beer hall, brewery thing. So that should be pretty cool. This is the 4th rendition, and the goal is to try to make it community-oriented, right? It's the place where you can go and sit, Alderperson Bailey, rooftop, all that stuff. So we're going to be looking at that tomorrow. Still negotiating with the state with regard to 894 in Loomis. That's another issue as far as future agendas go. We're getting closer, I think, on some of that stuff. Might have to, and I'm not sure if you guys did this at the Board of Public Works, but the neighborhood south of Morgan, which has just been, is wrapping up, that's a 2-part project. Next year is the first part of it. 2021 was supposed to be the second part of it. The second part of the project may get deferred another year because Layton Avenue will have to contribute towards Layton Avenue when the county redoes it. And that's absolutely critical, and we can't let that go by. If there's a way to do both, I mean, we certainly will. But everything that I see here suggests that we can't be borrowing a ton of money to, you know what I mean? We still have to stay within that plus or minus 15%, right? Still have to stay within the plus or minus, reserves of 25%, right? We got to plus or minus. It's a challenge, right? So
That's a county project, right? What would it cost you?
well, lighting, which is critical, sidewalks, which are critical.
They won't pay for that.
They don't pay for that. Some of the other things that are sort of important is when we did Layton Avenue from 84th West to Highway 100, there were power lines going everywhere, right? There was a cost to bury those things. It's a mess, right? So we're looking at some of that costing. Maybe it's not all of them.
Are they putting in a parking lane, or are they?
It's going to be the same cross-section, I think. Yeah, that's the other issue, right? They won't even pay for the white stripe where the bike lane is supposed to be, right?
Oh, that too. I meant on
Which was part of the environmental study, but that's another story.
west of Highway 100, they wouldn't even put in.
No, they wouldn't even do it. So
Unless we paid for them.
unless we paid for it. So no, it's a full cross-section, but we are responsible for sidewalks, lighting, traffic signal maintenance agreements. We have to be 50/50 partners in that. Some of the other costs associated with that, there might be stormwater issues that we have to address that go into our system. We got to take care of that. It's expensive. It's incredibly expensive, and we only have one opportunity to do it right. That road was built in 1955, and it hasn't had anything done to it other than when the state did an overlay, so that when trucks were going down the road, the windows wouldn't break in people's houses because the road was so bad. So it's going to be an expensive project. And it's critical to the city because Layton Avenue really is our main street, right? I mean, when we did our comprehensive land use plan, Layton, even though it's not our road, is kind of considered, we're trying to make it into our main street. So that's a big deal for you guys. So that's that.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Item 9,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 6:49 PM.
So did